Hey guys, so in this course, The Guide Within, sorry about my glasses, I wanted to just give you a brief video teaching on some elements of this course that should help you. I want to talk about Moses. I'll talk about his encounter at the burning bush. If you recall, Moses as a baby was born at a terrible time in Egypt, and what was happening is that Pharaoh had decided, because basically, you know the story, that what happened was that he decided to commit genocide and kill all the baby boys, and the reason being there was too many Jews, too many slaves in Egypt. Of course, we know the story. Moses was placed in a reed basket, placed in the Nile, and then found by Pharaoh's daughter, brought into his court, raised as a prince of Egypt by his mother and his sister, interestingly enough, who kept him in touch with his Jewish tradition, with the Israelite story of Abraham, everything. Later on, in an instance where Moses sees his people being abused, in particular a taskmaster who was whipping another Israelite, Moses loses his temper and he kills the slave master. He ends up being exiled from Egypt instead of being killed because of who he was. So he ends up in Jethro's household and becoming a shepherd and watching over sheep. So we know what happens next. While he's shepherding, which I'm sure he thinks is his entirety of his life, he's done everything he's going to do. He's got a good life. He's under protection and in a good place. And he encounters the burning bush. And in that burning bush, he encounters God. What I want to refer to is his dialogue in Exodus 3:1 through 4, in which he is dialoguing with God and he's debating God about his qualifications and his abilities and who am I going under, what authority, who is sending me. You want me to go and ask Pharaoh to let his people go so they can worship and then take them on and deliver them to the promised land. And he's just a shepherd, right? He's a shepherd tending sheep. He's been exiled. He knows if he goes back to Egypt, he faces certain death. So how does that relate to the guide within and the journey that Moses had been on up to that time? Was he qualified? Was he born to this? Was his entirety of his life an initiation or a journey? Gary Barkalow states that everything in our lives is initiation for the next thing God has for us. And so I certainly can look at Moses' life and begin to look at the themes, look at his upbringing, look in the court and who he's with. And certainly, even though he's standing there before God and saying, I can't speak, who am I to go and do this thing? Well, who else would God have chosen, right? If you think about who Moses was, the fact that he had inside knowledge of Egypt, he had a dual citizenship, practically, he did, as an Israelite and as an Egyptian. And what a perfect man to go in and understand from his position, actual royal family, and to be able to go and to deliver this message and speak with authority. He had also been given grace and was able to leave Egypt with his life, even though he was under exile. And he had been through many experiences, even in Jethro's household. He had spent many hours in the fields tending the sheep, shepherding sheep. Right, he'd been a shepherd. And so I put forth the theory and the truth that that man that ended up guiding the Israelites across many, many years, right, 40 years in the wilderness, across many difficulties, was perfectly suited for the job God was calling him to, especially since when he argued with God, I am not the man you're looking for. And on what authority? Who do I say it is that sent me? And God says, despite everything I've said and prepared you for, I am asking you. I am the one that's sending you. I am the one that has the authority. And you follow me. I have orchestrated all this for this time. And he even capitulates to Moses when he says, well, I stutter, I can't really talk well in front of people. And he says, okay, Aaron's a good speaker, I'll send him with you. And God is going to see this thing done. So the guide within is about you and looking back over your life and over your life history and looking at how has God prepared you. Everything in your life up to this point has been initiation, has been training, has been equipping for the specific purpose and task which God has with you. So there is a guide inside of you that maybe you don't even know about yet. I can promise you, I can say to you that when I started New Wilderness Adventures, right, it was taking people on backpacking trips, taking them whitewater rafting, climbing, doing events, doing spiritual things, yes, but that was a simple task to step out and do that because I was good at it. I felt very comfortable in those environments. I was very good at teaching and sharing and being patient with people and offering grace in training and teaching. That has expanded now to this course that you're in, this guide training, in which the guide within, God knew in 1998 when I was in the Grand Canyon or when I was in the mountains of North Carolina that he knew he had a path for me laid out and he had a purpose for me. I didn't really fully see who that guide was, but God had seen it. He had been refining it over years of my life through my church work, through being trained in evangelism, through going out on the mission field, through many of other things, my business experience. And it wasn't until years later that I sat down in a seminar, in a weekend retreat, based on Gary Barkalow's book, It's Your Call, in which I sat down and saw this all displayed in front of me, in which we went through this really exhaustive process of going back through our life and looking at the themes, looking at the way God had weaved things together to bring about the person that God had created and the purpose He created for me and in me. And it made perfect sense as I looked back and I said, God did this. Yes, I did gain experience here. I have done this. I've operated in this role. I've functioned not only as a guide in the wilderness, but I've spent a lot of time with men and counseling and encouraging and speaking truth to men and just supporting men. So as I really took some specific time to look at what that guide looked like, it began to affirm in me more and more what God was calling me to. And the environment in which I began to operate right in the out of doors, in the adventure settings, is where I think it was God's grace that even though it was a difficult and monumental task for me to step away from everything I knew, which was my business, my real estate, and then move into something that was so freeing and so, it felt like I was cheating to be out there working in these environments, working with men, but yet it was so freeing that everything that I wanted in myself, the guidance came naturally. My placing my hands on people or directing them both in my skills or in teaching them skills, but also in ministering to them in the way that Jesus did and that He taught us to. And in that same environment, God began to train me through many other experiences, how to pray, how to enter into spiritual battle, how to counsel, alongside with learning literally how to rescue people, how to fix broken bones or mend cuts. Alongside that same experience, God began to train me in these other areas. He brought both of those things together in my life through different streams of learning, through different encounters with other people, through teachings, through many authors and teachers such as John Eldredge or Dallas Willard or Henry Blackaby. I could go on and on, C.S. Lewis, but also through outdoor leadership schools and Outward Bound and Stonehorth Open Learning Opportunities, in which I gained experience and knowledge of how to do rescues in the wilderness, how to sustain someone who had been injured. And those all paralleled what I wanted to do spiritually, what I wanted to do as a minister, and not only be able to take care of somebody physically, but also how to take care of them spiritually, how to minister to them, how to offer counsel and guidance. Step here, right, on the trail, or step here in your life, or avoid this bad water on the trail, or in your spiritual life, avoid, right, anger or rage or lust or confrontation just for confrontation's sake. Many things that God began to parallel. And so that guide within, that as I offered my strength and guidance on the trails, began to also manifest itself more in my ministry to men and how I guided them. And I do this to this day on both levels, whether it's fly fishing, backpacking, whether it's counseling or prayer or encouragement or advice or coaching. All those things come together. And that really flowed from this God inside of me that I did not recognize or give complete credit to. It was a minuscule thing that I did not go out every day and function in. I did partially in my business. I did partially in my church. When I brought all that together fully and began to operate fully in those things, is when that God within really began to flourish and grow and produce fruit. And that's what this is all about for you, for me, in the guide training, in the guide within, is that what we do produces fruit in others. And that fruit comes from us pouring out what God gives us and just letting it overflow and being in those environments where we know God is pleased with us. We feel His presence. We feel His unction. And sometimes we may not feel that, and we just operate on faith. There's been many times when I have not felt like things were going well, but yet God was operating simply because I was functioning in the role and in my purpose. It doesn't always mean that we have to be on perfectly for God. God is always on perfectly for Him. He's always presenting through us, even through our flawed selves. If we will just go out and begin a task, we can have faith that He will complete it. And we work, believe me, as a guide, you're going to work to be the very best at what you are. And there's many times when I do a retreat or do an event or do an adventure where I think, gosh, man, I could have done this better. Or I wish I knew this better. And believe me, I've been lost on the trail with people in the past. And it's a funny story to talk about now, but did it diminish what God was doing? No, it did not diminish that one bit. And I didn't beat myself up. Or did I improve? Yes, I went back and restudied the maps and I became better at it next time. But as we talk about, and I do some other videos for this course, The Guide Within, we're going to talk again about the disciples. We're going to talk about Jesus Christ. We're going to talk about His prayers, His time alone with God, and begin to function and operate. Is how do we function and operate and discover that God within, and let that God within come out to the surface. Okay? So be praying and asking that God be with you, and as I present these other videos and we teach a little bit more on the God within, read the book It's Your Call by Gary Barklow. It'll be a tremendous help. I'll also share some other YouTube videos that should be of help to you now. So till the next video, God bless.